some of the more shadow, things associated with being Virgo sometimes. I wanted him to actually really, really like those and think that those were kind of pros. Started color coding as I was going through the chapter, and I found that that really helped me a lot. It gives a better picture of his actual personality, and I think it just really helps highlight where he's at in the romantic arc. Yeah, I had a little bit of a revelation of this like Irish megalithic sort of structure type stuff that I might want to mean something particular in this story. I did finish working on this third sequence. I finished that chapter 29 to wrap up that section on Friday. We have an actual updated outline to be working off of, guys. I'm so excited. If you're new, my name is Steph Claire. Welcome. I'm on a journey to become a self-published romantasy author, rom-com romantasy author. I don't know. We're like figuring it out. I'm working on this standalone interconnected series. Right now for this video, we're working on book 1, and it's time for draft 2 stuff. So the last video was spent fixing a certain section of the book on the outline level for developmental edits. And that just went really well, and I'm excited to implement them in this video. So we're working on a particular part of the book that I call sequence 3. If you're interested, I will link in the description where I talk about what the sequences are and go into more depth. But the TLDR is that it's working on chapters 21, which is right after that adhesion thrust, door of no return plot marker, through to chapter 29, which is that first reminder of the stakes beat. So that's what we're working on, and I actually already started because I was really excited. So yesterday, I updated chapter 21, so that's now in draft 2 format. So hooray, that went pretty well because I have this outline to help me. So I'm literally just Frankensteining stuff. I'm not trying to like make it sound super great. I'm just trying to bring it into alignment with the more solidified idea of what I want the story to be. So I'm just looking at the outline we completed, and I'm taking out pieces from chapters, moving things from one chapter to another, adding things. It's that sort of thing. So it really is like a Frankenstein approach. This particular section doesn't have very many chapters that need to be completely rewritten, and I'm kind of just like fine with draft 2 still reading kind of like a draft 1 in terms of the prose quality, because it's really just like that story alignment, developmental layer that I really care about. Because once I have that solid, then it's like fun to sit down and really think about, okay, what's like the scene progression I want to do? How do I want to set it up? How do I want to like build tension through the scene? How do I want to, deliver on the payoff of the scene? That's fun at that point. But if I was to try to do that now, as I'm also doing developmental level stuff, I think I would just like go insane. So let's not do that. Okay, anyway, so that's like the background. So it's August 5th right now, and I'm trying not to grind, which if you watched any of my other videos, that's like a difficult thing to do, is to just like do a little bit steadily. But I'm trying to do that because kids are home. I have a 6-year-old and a 7.5-year-old. They're going back to school in like 4 weeks. So I'm trying to just like chill out. Don't go too crazy, super focused on writing, which I can tend to do, and just make the steady progress. And that's been going fine, even though it's totally not my personality. This video should go from August 5th to August 14th, Friday. And by then we will be done with this section. So I'm gonna put on the screen what the word count was of draft 2 so far, because I did complete already the first quarter of the book. So that's what the word count had been. And then here's what the word count now is after updating chapter 21 yesterday. For the purposes of this second draft, word count is a blip. It doesn't mean anything really, except to stress me out occasionally when I'm like, oh my God, am I writing like 150,000 word rom-com? Like, I'm not doing that. But yeah, like I said, we haven't even gone into what the scene structure is going to be looking like. So I just like, that word count is going to change massively, and we can get it down. Yeah, chapter 21 went pretty smoothly, honestly, because it's so rough. So There are a couple things where I'm just like, oof, yikes. But it is like on a story level fine, so I am moving on. Chapter 22, which is what we're working on today, should go relatively fast because if you watch the previous video where it was like updating the outline for this section of the book, I kind of explained what some of the changes were on a story functionality level rather than plot, if that makes sense. So in this video, we're not going to like retread that ground, but I will just say that this chapter involves mostly taking things out of this chapter that went into a different, chapter 21. So time to get off the camera and do some work. We're going to fix chapter 22. It's August 7th. It's just about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was going to start working on chapter 24 for today. But let's just real quick catch up on how 22 and 23 went. Something that I didn't expect from going through this second draft is how much I'm able to fix the tone and relationship dynamic between the main characters without that being the focus. So I think it's just kind of like a product of writing the initial version the way I had in the outline, reading it over and being like, oh man, okay, there's some like things that need to be strengthened here, and kind of sitting with it for a little while. And then it just feels like it's naturally coming into how I'm approaching things, which is nice because I was not going into draft 2 being like, I gotta fix this relationship dynamic. It's not correct right now. I was like, let's, bring the story into alignment with what I want the story to be. So it's really nice that I'm able to sort of do multiple things at once, even though I have a different focus, So that's been really nice. That happened with chapter 22 a lot. When I'm talking about the relationship dynamic, I love the idea of coming up with sun and moon signs, astrology, for my female main character and my male main character, and just sort of riffing on the harder aspects of a relationship with those signs and the easier aspects, and sort of weaving that in. So I'm not like, defining the story by this, but it is helping with a lot of, what I want the conflict between them to be, and just these very different ways they approach life. One of the problems is that in the first draft, my female main character is a Virgo. And I had a certain facet of what it means to be a Virgo that I wanted to portray with her in this very high stress situation she finds herself in, and how that situation is just difficult for her, not just because she's a Virgo, but because like her past and all this stuff, but whatever. So it's like Virgo under extreme pressure. Whereas the male main character is an Aries. So he just has this completely different way of approaching life and reacting to things. And that creates a lot of the tension between them that's exacerbated, obviously, because of these other things going on. But I had not been satisfied by the way that I was portraying her as a Virgo. I wanted her to be a lot more authoritative, a lot more decisive, a lot more sort of sharp. And one of the things from the first draft is that I wasn't really happy with how their dynamic played off of each other, because I wanted him to find her sort of perfectionism, bossiness, sort of some of the more shadow, things associated with being Virgo sometimes. I wanted him to actually really, really like those and think that those were kind of pros. And I thought that would be just like really, really cute. And so in chapter 22, I was able to sort of get a little bit of that in there, and I really liked the way that came across. So chapter 22 was from his perspective, so it was really cute to be able to see him reacting and just kind of like being very taken by her bossiness sort of thing going on. And then in chapter 23, that's from her perspective. And I really liked how I was able to show his very playful, sort of like charmingness, so irritating her because of things she knows that are going on that are super serious, super high stakes, that he has no idea about. So he's just like, ooh, let's have fun. And she's like, oh my God, I could kill this man right now. But she needs his help. And so she like, it's such a difficult thing for her. But so I really like how that particular dynamic came across in this chapter. There was quite a bit that I needed to update as far as the actual things on the page. There's a lot more internality that needed to be there as we're going through some of the action pieces here. And I really, really like how I was able to take that like conflicting attitude of how to move through life and have him say something that is just sort of like an off the cuff thing, but that has deeply significant impact on her because she knows that they're fated mates and like all this stressful stuff, and he doesn't know that. And so she takes it super seriously. And he's just like, I don't understand what's going on. And I really liked that. And I was able to also put like a little bit of her backstory in here, which we really need, because another weakness from draft one is that the big bad guy that needs to be, you know, defeated in that fourth quarter of the book in the climax, he's not where they are for most of the book. And he's not necessarily aware of them to a certain extent until like closer to the end of the book, which leaves a big structural problem because, you know, usually if there's a big bad guy in the story, you have them making moves, making things difficult for the protagonist, but actually it's more of it's a different vibe going on. So by being able to show some of the backstory that she's had with this guy, very briefly, it's like 200 words around this section of the book, it really introduces the bad guy and the stakes that we need since he's not actually literally there. So I was really happy with that. That wasn't in the plan. I wasn't planning to do like, ooh, backstory. And I even changed the backstory too. There's an element of how two characters met each other that I thought was one way. And then as I started writing this backstory scene, I was like, I don't think logistically that could have happened, but wouldn't it be kind of interesting and intriguing if it was this other situation? And so I think that's how two characters met each other. As much as I love outlining and planning stories, sometimes you just like find things as you're writing, you're like, that's better. I love how readers get to see the total, you know, difference in how much each character knows and understands about the other one. And it sort of generates this really fun sort of feeling as you're reading it where you're like, oh no, like I understand both of them, but oh no, what are you doing? So that's my whole thing. Fantastic. We're gonna write chapter 24 now. Oh, but actually one more thing. I just wanted to mention that yesterday I started color coding as I was going through the chapter, and I found that that really helped me a lot. When I did my outline for what I want draft 2 to be, it was in a format where it was like 1 to 2 sentences explaining different beats of what needs to happen within the scene. And so I have it in my Scrivener document in the notes section. So there's these little paragraphs in the notes section to explain briefly what is going on in this chapter. So in draft 2, every time I work on the next chapter, I copy paste over what I had for draft 1 into draft 2, go through and just literally delete things that I know are not going to be in that chapter anymore. And then I started color coding things. So anything that I already had that vaguely matches what's still supposed to be in the outline, I was like, okay, that's all one color. Doesn't matter what color. And then when I get to a section that addresses a different part of what's in that outline, I put that a different color. So that the whole way through, we've got all these different colors correlated to different parts of what I want this chapter to be. So then I can go through and be like, okay, there's not that much in this section. Let's add a little bit to that. Or, okay, actually this section feels like it should be moved over here now, or, you know, and it's just like easier to work with blocks of color than just like all black. Oh God. So I found that really helpful. I'm gonna do that again today. So anyways, that's that. It's August 11th. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. And the writing's been going pretty well. We'll do a little bit of an update. It's been a little bit of a morning. Kids woke up a little sensitive. It happens, which just meant a lot of interruptions after we usually would, you know, disperse to do morning things, and I would do my writing. They do their own things. They enjoy being kids when mom's not telling them what to do. The interruptions are really exacerbating my sort of procrastination towards beginning chapter 26, which is what I'm supposed to do today. And the problem with chapter 26 is that I think it's a lot of a lot of things that are getting inserted, more conversation that needs to be had, which is somewhat trickier. I don't know if that's actually true though, or if I'm just feeling like, ugh, think of things is bad, so don't do it is good. I don't know that it's actually necessarily harder. So I'm gonna try just doing the color coding trick. I haven't done that for this chapter yet, and I'm hoping that just the color codedness of it helps me just stop thinking of it as, oh no, whole chapter, uh-oh, and more, just do the pink part. Okay, just do the blue part, you know? So I'm hoping that will help. But let's talk about how 24 went. I don't think we got into that. Chapter 24 was kind of fun because it was more of a voice amplifier and refining the dialogue interchanges between the two of them than it was necessarily adding more to the chapter or taking things out. So there was a lot of even just keeping stuff from draft one, but putting it in a different section, moving lines from the middle of a paragraph to the beginning, and, you know, that sort of level editing. So the biggest actual change is the flow of the male main character's feelings, attitude towards the female main character throughout the course of the book. It's more concise. It gives a better picture of his actual personality, and I think it just really helps highlight where he's at in the romantic arc, how he feels towards her. Whereas before it was a little bit choppy. It was sort of like, he feels this way, then he does this stuff and he feels this way. And so instead it's more it flows. There's little lines that help sort of highlight the change, and I like the way that came through. But there's not really much actual on the page events that changed. 25 was one of my favorite chapters in draft one, and I didn't change that much that's on the page, except I tightened up the dialogue, so it's a lot more in character. It flows a little bit better. There's some particulars that are a little bit more logical, that sort of thing. I think one of the biggest changes is that you can really see, how he feels about the relationship and about her and how he would like to be in terms of relating to her in a relationship. It's much more clear that you can see that, and it's very sweet and endearing, whereas it was a little harder. It felt more like he was interrogating her in draft one, and now draft two feels more like sort of trying to take care of her through questions. Yeah, and with the dialogue changes, it's a little bit more funny. And this chapter is so sweet because we get to see, it's the midpoint chapter in this third sequence, and so I really like that around the midpoint of a sequence, there's a shift that's pretty noticeable. And the shift here is that up until this point, the female main character had been like totally committed, dead set against really getting to know him, feeling anything for him, indulging in any curiosity she might have had about him for reasons that make sense to her. And there's high stakes associated with that. But just through the course of this particular chapter, the way that he interacts with her, it lowers her guard in a way that she didn't expect or know that he could do. And by the end of it, the shift is that the curiosity, the desire to know him is stronger than the fear of getting to know him and the desire to not. So that's the major shift here. And I really like getting to see his personality, and he just sort of like finagles it. It's really cute. Okay, but it's 9:09, and now I need to actually start doing some writing that I don't feel like doing. So let's get color coding and do it anyways. It's August 13th, just about 9 o'clock, and I am sitting down to begin working on chapter 27, and I'm just like tired. It's a stupid kind of tired because I got enough sleep and I had coffee. So what are we doing? So anyways, kind of annoying. So that's making it not super fun to be like, let's start writing. So instead, let's talk about chapters 26 and 27. Chapter 26 is in Selena's point of view, and it was really just like getting a lot more clear and eloquent on her internality. There's a lot of internality at the beginning of the chapter because she's reacting to this change mindset shift that he triggered in the last chapter. I had a little bit of a revelation on part of the story theme a couple days ago while I was driving to pick up my daughter from sleeping over at my dad's house. So yeah, I had a little bit of a revelation of this like Irish megalithic sort of structure type stuff that I might want to mean something particular in this story. And that if I do that, then that really helps illuminate what I want part of her magic to be. I know this is a little vague, but I had some pretty big question marks for a while about some stuff. And I feel like I kind of like things clicked together. And that if that's the direction I want to go, which I think it really is, I think that really ties in well with kind of everything I'm trying to do with this story, then this particular chapter gives a little bit of insight into the worldview that's supporting how that's going to be portrayed later on, like in the fourth quarter of the book, in the climax. So this is sort of like the first time we would get a taste of what is to come. So I really like that, and that wasn't part of the outline when I did the outline for how draft 2 is going to be. I hadn't had that revelation yet, so anyways, that was new. So I think that provides really interesting insight into her character, as well as I really like her justification for why she thinks he's doing and saying certain things. I think that is really cute and sweet and poignant. And I inserted a fact thing that needed to be in here, something that she had done that we need her to have done it for later on in a couple of chapters, but I hadn't even, I had forgotten to put that in the outline as well. So we've got that in there now. And I tightened up and fleshed out a interaction that they have that needs to show functionally her difficulty, the difficulty she has in beginning to like him just the very littlest bit, when there's super high stakes for her that go along with what that would mean, and she's sort of like trying to reject that idea. So we get to see that portrayed through this conversation that's very sweet, and like learning some stuff about Ragnar's backstory that makes him more intriguing to her and hopefully to the readers as well. So yeah, the dialogue got tightened up a lot. It's much more rom-com-y now. It was a little choppy before, got more depth to it and got more, banter. So I feel pretty good about how that went. Chapter 27 is her point of view as well. In the vlog on making the outline, I had mentioned that this is the chapter where there's context for why she needs to tell him a story. It's not a very long story. It's like a couple hundred words of a story. It's very brief. But I needed to change what that story was for some reasons. And that's definitely the weakest part of it, is I was just like not in the mood to be like, let me sit and really nail down how I want her to say this and how I want her style to be as she's like telling a story. It's like a fairy tale sort of thing. And so that's the weakest part, but the rest of it I feel like came across really well. I needed him to have a certain commentary on it, but as it turned out, as I was writing that, I was like, before he got to the point where he was able to give a commentary, he would have a reaction. It would sort of, the story would trigger him in some ways, and he would have a reaction that would not go over well. And so that was like a really fun conflict between them that I really liked the way that came through. And I think that led much smoother into his delivery of the commentary and her receptiveness to it. And I think that her reaction to his okay, so and when he has his reaction to the story, I think that her reaction to his reaction is very intriguing and fun, a little bit of a hook for readers. So I think that's really, really nice. What I really enjoy about this series and about particularly this book is the dispersal of information. You just sort of like unpeel layers as we go through the book of who this character is, who they were, who, like, what they want, why, all this stuff. So this is like a really interesting little like peeling back of a layer. So yeah, overall feeling pretty good about it. We've got 2 more chapters left to finish out this section and this vlog. So by tomorrow we should be done. Chapter day has been going very well. I just don't feel like it right now. I've got a little bit of a headache. So we'll figure that out. The color coding is ridiculously so necessary. I don't know how I ever tried to approach anything like this without color coding before this. And I don't know how or why I ever would not do this again, especially now when I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I have a headache, I don't feel like it. But this is what I want to do for my job. Like, that is not a reason to not do it. I'm not, writing when the inspiration strikes. That's not that kind of thing. So it's just like every couple lines happens to be a different color because it correlates to a different part of the outline that needs to be fleshed out in this chapter. So all I need to do is trick my brain and be like, just do the green text. Like, just look at that stuff, forget everything else, just fix the green text and then stop. I do think also there is a piece of it though that is sort of, I don't know, lucky maybe in the way that my brain works. I'm an Aries moon, and so my natural inclination when I tell myself to only do a certain thing is to immediately then go, I will do whatever I want. You don't get to make the rules. I will do that. And then if I want to do more, I will do more. Because at the end of the day, I want to win. And so whatever it takes to win. And so as long as I have created a game or like a winning possibility, like a way to win or lose, I want to win. So, I don't know. That may be a me thing. I don't know. Let's go win chapter 28. It's August 17th. It's Monday now. And I did finish working on this 3rd sequence. I finished that chapter 29 to wrap up that section on Friday. And that went pretty well. So let's do a little bit of a recap of how 28 and 29 went. I've got 28 pulled up right here. 28, the situation was really the same, but most of the dialogue between them changed, and I like the way that it is now. It's a lot more in character, I think, with where they're at emotionally. Before it was more mechanical to sort of like get through the scene. So this is feeling pretty good. I like the display of where he's at emotionally. We get a little bit of that with his internality. And then I had to change how it ended. He took an action in this version that he did not in the first draft. So I like that. And that sort of sets him up for where he's at in the climax to the sequence in the next chapter. So yeah, 28 went pretty good. 29 is in Selena's point of view. It's that last chapter of the section. So it's the climax of sequence 3, which, as far as like the overall plot points of the book, it's a big reminder of the stakes for what's going on, and it turns the story through the way that it plays out. It turns the story in an interesting way. The setup for where she's at internally at the beginning of this chapter is more in-depth and nuanced for sure. So I really like how that came across. And I think it really helps to explain why she's willing to write off a bunch of stuff going on, because it just like can't be important, and also her history plays into it. So I think that we needed to see that because it had felt like a little bit of a weak point in the first draft, why she was able to just so strongly believe this thing about the relationship between her and Ragnar at this point. And this helps with that for sure. Now, if we're talking about the overall quality of the chapter, I feel like this is one of the chapters that's a lot more clunky still in the second draft. Some of these chapters have felt actually like quite good as far as their readability, and this one there's there are a couple different parts of the chapter that just feel a little repetitive because I haven't figured out how I want a certain pressure point to play out. So it's just like the last couple chapters have had that pressure point pushed in the same way. So it's just like, okay, we're doing this again. But it's just sort of a reminder for me whenever I go through and do a pass, focusing on that to really easily clock it and be like, okay, yep, that happened again. And so how are we doing it differently this time? And I'm not getting into that in this pass. And then again, I think the dialogue is closer to being good. But again, I'm not sure if we're giving too much information that she wouldn't give at this point. So I think there's quite a bit of tuning in that can happen in future passes for that. But it's definitely better than it was. And then, yeah, through the dialogue, he gets a piece of information that explains for readers why he is going to take a certain action. And that really needed to happen. That wasn't really in the first draft. So then when he took a certain action, it felt kind of like it didn't really make sense what was motivating him to do that. So I like that I was able to put that in there. And then I love the way it ends, or it's just like slight cliffhanger, at the end of the chapter where you're like, wait a minute, what? Oh no. So yeah, I'm feeling really good about that. This section ended up being 18,482 words. And I have no idea how much of that was copied over and how much was new. I guess it's not something I really care about that much, but it is longer. It's a longer section than both the other sequences. Sequence 1 was 16,483 words, and sequence 2 is 16,242 words. So we're not worried about it right now. Second draft, there's going to be so much fixing that can happen, but that's where we're at. So yeah, we're at the start of a new week now. And so I'm going to start a new vlog sometime today or tomorrow. And I'm beginning to work on the fourth sequence. It's the last section that can be brought up to a second draft. And after that, there's a lot of world building things I need to figure out before I work on the second half of the book. But I also don't think that I want to be quite as goal driven with this fourth sequence coming up. I think I want to work more on the world building and sort of slow and steady work on sequence 4 chapters, because while I was working on this last section, I was feeling more energized and excited towards the end about world building. But I was like, no, shut that down. I need to focus on, getting to the end of these chapters by the date that I had set for myself. And there's a certain amount of that that's good and beneficial, but I don't think I want to stay in that mentality. I want to give myself a little bit of leeway. I'm excited about the world building. It does have to happen soon, very soon, so I may as well just lean into it. So with that being said, I have actually already done quite a bit of world building this morning, and so now I do want to switch over and just begin to dip my toes into chapter 30, writing that. But I'm not going to try to, write the entire chapter today. So we'll just see how far we get. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you guys are doing great and that you're having a great time writing. And I will see you in the next video.